الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أرسل نبيه بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره الكافرون. وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله أدى الأمانة وبلغ الرسالة ونصح الأمة. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله، فالتقوى مفتاح السعادة في الدنيا والآخرة. ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to praise Him, and we start always our khutbah by praising Him, by seeking His forgiveness, by seeking His mercy, and by seeking refuge with Him from the evil of our deeds and the sins of our hearts. We bear witness that there is no deity but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we bear witness that Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is His last prophet and messenger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him as a mercy to the whole world. We bear witness that Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam has delivered the message and fulfilled the trust. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us in the Quran to remain conscious of Him. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. O you who believe, remain conscious of Allah and consider what you have done for your tomorrow, and remain conscious of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fully aware of what you do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised those who remain conscious of Him great reward in this life and in the hereafter. In this life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to ease any difficulty that they would face in their life. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever remains conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will ease his difficulty and will give him a solution for his problems. وَيَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And He will provide for him from wherever he did not expect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تتقون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you that you establish justice, you behave in the best way you can, and you join the rahim, you give those who are nearest you in kin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids you that you do bad deeds or transgress against him or people. This is a reminder so that you may remember. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to do our best. Ihsan. Ihsan can be translated as excellence or doing good. And the Prophet ﷺ has echoed this verse. He said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْإِحْسَانَ فِي كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that you do ihsan in everything, that you do everything you do in the best way you can. Even when you kill an animal or you slaughter an animal, then you have to do it in the best way you can. You should make sure that the animal does not unreasonably suffer from these slaughter. Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab narrated that while they were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, one day a man came to their congregation and he sat in front of the Prophet ﷺ and he asked him 3 questions. The first question was, Ya Muhammad, tell me what is Iman? And the Prophet ﷺ answered him. And that man said, you have told the truth. And then he asked him about Islam, and the Prophet answered him, and the man said, yes, you are telling the truth. And then the man asked the Prophet ﷺ, what is ihsan? What do you mean by doing good, by being excellent in everything you do? And the Prophet ﷺ said that you do everything as if you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. That you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Him, because if you don't see Him, He indeed is seeing you or sees you. And these are, in this hadith, which most of you know, I just want to point out 2 points. Number 1, that ihsan, the definition of ihsan as provided by the Prophet ﷺ, is that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Him. The worship, we know worship in Islam is much more wider in scope than the rituals. It is much more wider than prayer, fasting, pilgrimage, and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created jinn and ins except to worship me. So the purpose of our creation is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you look at your daily activity, you only spend about half an hour performing the prayers. You fast every year for a month of Ramadan or maybe more. But it is the main purpose of the creation is serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and serving the purpose of your creation. Every one of us has been created with certain talents and skills and abilities to perform a certain function, and that is the ibadah. If we fulfill the purpose for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us for, then that is the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is the behavior of the human being. It is how you deal with people, how you deal with yourself, how you deal with your family, how you perform your work, how you live your life. It describes the way of life that the person is doing. So al-ihsan is to make your best to fulfill the purpose of your creation in everything you do. The other point that I would like to make, which is interesting, it is a side point, but it is interesting, and I just want to show that how the Quran is very precise in its wording, and how the Prophet ﷺ was very precise in his choice of words. The Prophet ﷺ says, if you don't see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah sees you. He didn't say, Allah knows what you do, Halimun bima taf'alun. He didn't say, Allahu khabirum bima taf'alun, fully aware of what you do. But he said, He sees what you do. The scholars of psychology did perform several studies, studying people performing certain jobs while they know that they are being observed. And they found out that the performance of the human being increases or improves when he is or she is aware that someone is looking, seeing what they do. And it's a long story, I'm not going to get into this, but I just wanted to show you that 1400 years after what the Prophet ﷺ said, seeing a person improves while he is doing something, improves his performance or her performance. And that's a perfect choice of words from the Prophet ﷺ. So ihsan is our goal. Ihsan is the thing that we need to do. Because when we do things in the right way, we should know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us, is looking at us and seeing what we are doing and how we are doing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not ask us more than what we can do. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. But He doesn't want us to be lazy, or He doesn't want us to waste our talent or skills and do not do the things the best way we can. So dear brothers and sisters, ihsan is a requirement of Islam. When you look at the other verses mentioning ihsan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that in the Quran that who are those who eligible to be muhsinin. So those التقوى من طرق الوصول إلى الإحسان. التقوى is a way to achieve ihsan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says 5 times in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who are doers of good or try to excel in what they do. Who are these people? Among them, and that's not, it is not an exclusive list, but among them, those who spend in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here, the doing good here is working hard to control your greed, because human beings are known to be greedy. So if we control our greed, if we control ourself, which tells us not to spend in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is a type of ihsan. Spending in the ينفقون في السراء والضراء. They spend in times of ease and in times of difficulty. Very often it is easy to spend when you have time, when you have easy times, meaning comfortable living, but it is difficult to do it when you are in a difficulty. And the Prophet ﷺ tells us that it doesn't really matter how much you spend. What really matters is the intention behind what you spend. So even if you have one day and share it with someone who has nothing, then this is the best you can. This is a type of ihsan. Al-Kazimin al-Ghayz, those who control their anger. We are, as human beings, we are very often volatile. We hear things and we express our feelings very quickly, and we get angry and we do certain things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like. A higher category is the وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and those who forgive people. Because you might control your anger, but you still have it in your heart that you do not forgive people. And that is very bad for your life, for your health. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be forgiving. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that if we forgive people, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive us. Those who persevere in times of difficulty are among those who are muhsinin. Again, it is controlling ourselves, controlling our, the way Shaitan whispers to us that we don't need to do this, we don't need to tolerate this. We would be among people who say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us and give us strength and make us overcome those who are disbelievers. And then finally, those who remain conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is a big door for becoming muhsin, because taqwa again is watching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, watching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything we do. These 5 verses in the Quran which says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who are doers of good or try to do their best in performing their acts or try to fulfill their mission in this life the best way they can, are worthy of gaining the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we gain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what else do we need from this life? أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وادعوا الله وأنتم موقنون بالإجابة. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم ارفع مقتك وغضبك عنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم لا تجعل لنا في هذا اليوم العظيم ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا عيبا إلا سترته، ولا دينا إلا قضيته، ولا مريضا إلا شفيته، ولا ميتا إلا رحمته، ولا حاجة هي لك رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم انصر إخواننا المظلومين في كل مكان. اللهم انصر إخواننا المظلومين في كل مكان. اللهم انصر إخواننا المظلومين في كل مكان. اللهم انصرهم في فلسطين. اللهم انصرهم في لبنان. اللهم انصرهم في سوريا. اللهم انصرهم في العراق. اللهم انصرهم في السودان برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
الله أكبر.